Okay, are you ready for another bedtime story? Alright, this one might be a long one, but it's not really very long. And it's called The Waterdragon and the Magpie Goose. Down beside a billabong, where native reeds and rushes grew, a water dragon passing by was enchanted by the view of pelicans, brolgas, ibises, cranes, ducks and geese galore, gliding in on graceful wings to wade along the shore. In the waters of the billabong, his own reflection caught his eye. He saw perfect scales, his slender tail and the rest of his attire. He was a very fine example of his aquatic reptilian race, which is why his glum expression seemed a little out of place. With saddened eyes he sat again to dream impossible things. I wish I had, oh, what I'd give to have a pair of wings, to soar above the treetops and beyond the bluest sky. Oh, what I'd give, oh, what I'd do, if only I could fly. Well, he hadn't gone unnoticed, the lonely figure by the shore. A magpie goose got curious and paddled over to explore. "Hello there," said the magpie goose. "I've watched you sit for days. I don't mean to be nosy, but there's sadness in your gaze. I've sat and watched with envy," said the dragon in reply. "Oh, what I'd give, oh, what I'd do, if only I could fly." "A lizard who wants wings," she scoffed. "How wonderfully absurd. The billabong will ring with laughter when I tell the other birds. They'll double up, their sides will ache, you'll be the laughing stock." And without a second wasted, the goose flew off to tell the flock. The dragon was alone again, his heart filled with despair. "Why do magpie geese have wings?" he sobbed. "How terribly unfair." His pride was hurt, but still he'd come alone to sit and pry on the silhouette of graceful wings against the sunset sky. Meanwhile, the goose had called a gathering of water birds alike, and her water dragon story was met with laughter and delight. A brolga rolled in raptures, 2 ducks fell on their ears, a goose collapsed, 1 nearly drowned, and 2 swans were brought to tears. "What nonsense," scorned an irate duck. "We should show this lizard why birds like us have wings and water dragons should not fly." So they came up with a plan to teach the dragon a hard lesson. If I told you here, I'd spoil the end, so for now I'll keep you guessing. The goose reapproached the lizard and meekly apologised. "It was awful to be rude. You need my help, I've realised. I've given it some thought. I want to offer you a ride." "Oh yes, I'd be delighted," the water dragon cried. "You can sit upon my back," she said. "My feathers are quite soft." But before the goose had finished, the dragon perched himself aloft. The goose's offer, it was genuine. I never said she lied. But the water dragon failed to see the glint of mischief in her eye. The bird blundered down the sandy bank. Behind them cheered the flock. But the dragon felt uneasy. They were headed for the rocks. He closed his eyes, he waited for an awful crashing sound, but with one more stride, a flap of wings, the goose's feet had left the ground. She balanced up, the dragon gasped, he felt himself grow light. As they cleared the native rushes, bewildered frogs leapt out of sight. The dragon's eyes flew open wide, and he waved his arms in glee. "I'm in the air at last," he cried. "Everybody, look at me!" "I want to see the bush, dear goose. Take me there, oh please." The goose just gave a silent nod and headed for the trees. They flew low between the eucalypts that towered overhead, and up and down through bottle brush of yellow, pink and red. A mob of roos just stared, confused, and echidna watched tight-lipped. 2 koalas, sleeping way up high, slipped and lost their grip. Kookaburras were elated, cockatoos enthralled, and emus, who of course can't fly, were totally appalled. "Where now?" inquired the goose. "Perhaps beyond the bluest sky." Oh no, again the dragon missed the glint of mischief in her eye. Could it be the plans unfolding? Is it time the dragon got a lesson in the ways of life? Yes, here starts the wicked plot. "Oh yes, let's fly beyond the bluest sky and see what we can see." And with that, the goose shot skyward, bursting through the canopy, up and up She carried him through clouds of wispy white. Her neck stretched out, her wings beat hard, the dragon held on tight. The water dragon was ecstatic. He was flying. What a day! Then a quick glance over his shoulder almost stole his breath away. His stomach churned, his muscles ached, his pulse was feeling weak, and just to reaffirm their height, he took another peek. Huge trees, now dwarfed below them, were a terrifying sight. Suddenly the dragon realised he possessed a fear of heights. He swallowed hard, seeking all the courage he could muster. "Please take me down," he cried aloud. "I feel faint, I'm in a fluster." But the goose, not changing course, kept charging skywards without fear. Was she oblivious to the dragon's cries, or just pretending not to hear? "Let me down, I've had enough," the dragon cried again. He could feel himself go giddy, about to faint, but then their climb began to slow. The goose's wings began to stall. A twist, a turn, a moment's pause, and then commenced the fall. They plummeted so fast the water dragon lost his breath. His head grew light and dizzy. He was sure of certain death. He grit his teeth and closed his eyes. His grip was clenched so tight that his knuckles, like the rest of him, had turned a funny shade of white. A howling wind whipped past his ears and burned his weeping eyes, and still the goose refused to hear his now faint and breathless cries. The ground below was closing fast, and things were looking grim. The dragon saw his very life flash right in front of him. But the goose was in control. With a little brake applied and a turn of wing, in a twinkling they were calmly on the glide. The goose winked at the flock, lined up and waiting on the sand, to let them know their insidious plot had been carried out as planned. She landed on the shore, the dragon slowly disembarked. His legs could barely take his weight. "You look pale," the goose remarked. "We're sorry for the nasty scare, but please let me explain. We had to be quite certain you would not waste your time again. For nature has its reasons, and you should never question why. Birds like us have wings, and water dragons should not fly." So for all the boys and girls, and Auntie Verity, it's now time for bedtime. Off to sleep, have a nice sleep, and maybe see you again soon.